Meet Ethan. He's 28, works for a software company, and lives in a small rental house outside of Asheville, North Carolina. For him, the nearest neighbor being half a mile away is a feature, not a bug. In this environment, physical distance acts as a primary defensive perimeter. If you can't see your neighbors, the logic goes, you are effectively isolated within your own geographic buffer. But on a Friday night in October, that perimeter was bypassed by a digital anomaly. While Ethan was watching a movie, his phone buzzed with a missed call notification. The caller ID didn't show a restricted number or a known contact. It displayed his own exact phone number. He was, according to the screen, calling himself. When he tried calling back, the connection immediately failed. It was an impossible signal, suggesting that the isolation of the woods offered no protection against a threat originating from within his own device. Minutes later, a voicemail arrived. There was no talking, just the sound of heavy breathing and a floorboard creaking. Ethan recognized the sound instantly. It was the specific board near his bedroom that always groaned under weight. When he played the recording back the next morning, he heard a faint sound in the background, the audio from the exact movie he had been watching the night before. Ethan checked every room with a flashlight. Every window was locked. Both doors were deadbolted. There was no physical sign of an entry. His phone provider later confirmed that their system had no record of the call ever being placed. On their network, the voicemail simply shouldn't have existed. The incident presented a paradox. A physical sound was recorded inside the home, but the digital path it took to get there left no traceable footprint. Over the following week, small things began to change. Ethan would find kitchen cabinets left slightly ajar, or a chair moved several inches from its usual spot. These were small enough to dismiss as his own forgetfulness, but they kept happening. On Thursday, the atmosphere shifted. When Ethan entered the house, it smelled like wet soil and damp earth. He searched the house and found his bedroom closet door standing wide open. He was certain he had left it closed. Hanging from an empty hanger inside was a single piece of paper. It was a handwritten note that read, "Stop looking for me." The police found no fingerprints, no tool marks on the windows, and no signs of forced entry. To the officers, the house was perfectly secure. Deadbolts and window locks are designed to keep people out. They are functionally useless when the threat is already operating on the other side of the door. Ethan installed a system of internal and external security cameras, hoping technology would provide the visibility his own eyes had missed. On the fourth night, he was woken at 3:12 a.m. by the sound of fingernails dragging across wood inside his bedroom walls. He checked the camera app on his phone. The hallway feed showed a tall, thin figure standing motionless at the far end of the hall. Reviewing the footage, police noticed a perspective discrepancy. The camera looked out from the bedroom doorway. The figure wasn't down the hall, it stood just inside the doorway, barely 3 feet from Ethan's bed. The lens's wide edge merely made it appear distant. Cameras provide a sense of oversight, but they also have inherent blind spots. In this case, the technology didn't prevent an intrusion, it simply documented how close the intruder had managed to get. A more thorough search of the exterior led the police to a narrow crawlspace entrance concealed behind thick bushes. Inside, they found the source of the damp smell: blankets, water bottles, and food wrappers. Someone had lived directly beneath the floorboards for months. The police also found a collection of photographs. They were pictures of Ethan mowing the lawn, leaving for work, and sitting in his living room, taken through the windows at night. The evidence suggested a long-term pattern of surveillance. The intruder hadn't just found a place to sleep. They had been studying Ethan's routine to move through the house undetected. The intruder fled before the police could make an arrest. Despite the evidence in the crawlspace, there were no DNA matches and no fingerprints in the system. The case remained open but unsolved. Ethan moved to a new apartment in a different town, keeping his new address off social media and away from anyone but his closest friends. 6 months later, his phone vibrated. He received a 10-second voicemail from an unknown number. First, he heard the creak of a floorboard. the specific one in his new apartment. Then a whisper, "I'm still here." Ethan moved again 3 weeks later, but he stopped telling people where. He realized that a new address or a stronger lock provides little comfort once you know that your private life has been mapped out by someone else. The feeling of being watched doesn't require a visible shadow in the hallway to persist.